Moses parts the sea, miracle, prologue, chains of Egypt. In the land of Goshen, where the Nile's delta bloomed with reeds and the sun beat down on mud brick villages, the Israelites groaned under the weight of slavery. For 400 years they had toiled under Egypt's yoke, their backs scarred by whips, their hands molding bricks for Pharaoh's cities. The once proud descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were now a people broken, their hope dimmed by the overseer's cruelty and the shadow of Egypt's gods. Yet in the heavens the Almighty stirred. The cries of his people reached him, and the covenant made with their fathers burned bright. In the wilderness of Midian, a man named Moses, once a prince of Egypt, now a shepherd, had met the God of Israel in a burning bush. Called to lead, reluctant but obedient, Moses returned to Egypt, his staff a symbol of divine authority. With his brother Aaron, he confronted Pharaoh, demanding freedom. 10 plagues followed: blood, frogs, locusts, darkness, each a strike against Egypt's idols, until the final blow, the death of the firstborn. Pharaoh relented, and the Israelites fled, their exodus a desperate race toward freedom. Now, on the edge of the Red Sea, with Egypt's chariots thundering behind them, the Israelites faced their greatest test. The sea stretched before them, vast and unyielding, its waves a wall of death. Behind them, Pharaoh's army closed in, their bronze spears glinting with malice. In this moment, Moses, the man of God, would stand between despair and deliverance, his faith the spark of a miracle that would echo through the ages. Chapter 1: The Flight from Egypt. The sun hung low over the desert, painting the sands crimson as the Israelites marched from Ramesses. Moses led them, his weathered face set like flint, his staff gripped tightly. At 80 years old, his frame was lean from years in Midian's wilderness, but his eyes burned with purpose. Beside him walked Aaron, his brother, silver-haired and steady, his voice a bridge between Moses's divine calling and the people's fears. Miriam, their sister, moved among the women, her tambourine silent but her spirit fierce, rallying the weary with songs of hope. The Israelites were a multitude, 600,000 men, plus women and children, a river of humanity flowing through the desert. They carried what they could: unleavened bread from the Passover, gold and silver plundered from their Egyptian neighbors, and the bones of Joseph, a reminder of God's promise to bring them to a land of milk and honey. Their flocks bleated, their children clung to mothers' robes, and their elders leaned on staffs, eyes wide with the wonder of freedom. Moses followed the Lord's guidance, a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, leading them not by the direct road to Canaan, but through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. "The Lord will protect us," he told Aaron, his voice low. "Pharaoh's heart is hardened, and he may pursue. But God has a purpose in this path." Aaron frowned, glancing at the ragtag multitude. The people are free, but their hearts are still in Egypt. They grumble already about the heat, the dust, the unknown. What will they do if Pharaoh comes? Moses' gaze was distant, fixed on the pillar of cloud. They will see God's hand. We must trust. That night, as the Israelites camped near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, word spread of Pharaoh's pursuit. Scouts returned, their faces pale, reporting chariots and horsemen massing in the distance. Panic rippled through the camp. Men clutched spears they barely knew how to wield. Women wept, holding their children close. Moses climbed a rocky outcrop, his voice rising above the chaos. "Fear not. The Lord has brought us out, and he will not abandon us." But the people's fear was louder. A man named Dathan, a wiry elder with a sharp tongue, pushed forward. "You've led us to die, Moses. Better to serve in Egypt than perish in this wilderness." Miriam stepped beside her brother, her eyes flashing. "Have you forgotten the plagues, the blood in the Nile, the death of Egypt's firstborn? The Lord is with us." Dathan spat into the sand, but others nodded, clinging to Miriam's words. Moses raised his staff, silencing the crowd. The Lord will fight for you. Be still." As night fell, the pillar of fire blazed, standing between the Israelites and the approaching Egyptians. The camp settled uneasily, their faith a fragile thread. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Pharaoh. By dawn, the Egyptian army was visible, a dark line on the horizon, their chariots gleaming like beetles under the rising sun. Pharaoh himself led them, his golden armor a beacon of wrath, his heart hardened once more. He had mourned his firstborn, but pride drove him to reclaim his slaves. 600 chariots, each manned by a driver and archer, thundered across the desert, flanked by horsemen and foot soldiers. Their war cries carried on the wind, chilling the Israelites' blood. Moses stood at the edge of the camp, facing the sea. Its waters churned, a vast expanse of blue and grey, its waves crashing against the shore. Behind him, the people's cries grew desperate. "Why have you brought us here, Moses?" a woman shouted. "To drown or be slaughtered." Aaron gripped Moses' shoulder. "Brother, what now? The sea blocks our path, and Pharaoh draws near." Moses' heart pounded, but he knelt, his staff planted in the sand. "Lord," he prayed, "you called me from the burning bush." The voice of God came, clear and mighty, like a rushing wind. "Why do you cry to me? Tell the people to go forward. Lift your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it. The Israelites will cross on dry ground. I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue, but I will be glorified in him and his army." Moses rose, his face radiant with faith. He turned to the people, his voice a trumpet. "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again." The multitude fell silent, caught between terror and hope. Moses raised his staff, his arm steady, and stretched it over the sea. A wind roared from the east, fierce and unrelenting, tearing at robes and tents. The sea trembled, its waves parting like curtains, revealing a path of dry ground, flanked by walls of water that shimmered like glass. The Israelites gasped, children pointed, their fear turning to wonder. Miriam began to sing, her voice a spark that ignited the camp. "The Lord is my strength and my song, he has become my salvation." Chapter 3. The Crossing. Moses led the way, his staff raised, his steps sure on the seabed. The path was wide, the ground firm, though damp sand clung to sandals. To the left and right, the waters stood as walls, their surfaces rippling but unyielding, fish darting within like shadows. The pillar of fire remained behind, holding back the Egyptians, its light casting a glow over the crossing. The Israelites followed, a river of humanity pouring through the sea. Shem, a young father, carried his son on his shoulders, whispering, "Look, my boy, the Lord has made a way." His wife, clutching a newborn, wept with joy. Elders leaned on staffs, their eyes wide at the miracle. Even Dathan, though silent, marched forward, his skepticism shaken. Aaron walked beside Moses, his voice low. "This is beyond all we've seen. The plagues, the Passover, God's hand is mighty." Moses nodded, his eyes fixed ahead. He is showing the world who he is, not just for us, but for all nations. The crossing took hours, the multitude stretching across the seabed. The youngest and weakest moved slowly, but none were left behind. Miriam and the women sang, their voices rising above the wind, strengthening weary hearts. As the last stragglers reached the far shore, the pillar of fire vanished, and the Egyptians charged into the path, their chariots rattling, their shouts defiant. Pharaoh at the head urged his men forward, his eyes fixed on the fleeing Israelites. "They are ours," he roared. "The sea will not save them." But the wheels of the chariots began to stick, sinking into the sand, which grew soft and treacherous. Horses reared, and soldiers cursed, their advance faltering. Moses, now on the eastern shore, turned. Chapter 4. The Waters Return. The Lord spoke again. "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may return upon the Egyptians, their chariots, and their horsemen. Moses raised his staff, his voice a cry of faith. Lord, let your will be done. He stretched out his hand and the east wind ceased. The walls of water trembled, then collapsed with a roar like 1,000 lions. The sea surged back, swallowing the path, the chariots, and the army. Waves crashed over Pharaoh's golden armor, silencing his cries. The Egyptians vanished beneath the foam, their spears and shields sinking into the deep. The Israelites stood frozen, their breath caught as the sea settled, its surface calm once more. Not a trace of the enemy remained. A cheer erupted, wild and joyous, echoing across the shore. Men embraced, women danced, and children ran in circles, shouting. Miriam seized her tambourine, her voice soaring in a song of victory. Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. The women joined her, their tambourines ringing, their feet stamping the sand in a dance of deliverance. Moses watched, his heart full, his staff still warm in his hand. Aaron clapped him on the shoulder, tears in his eyes. The Lord has done this, brother. We are free. Dathan, standing apart, muttered, A miracle, yes. But what now? The desert awaits. Moses met his gaze, unflinching. The Lord who parted the sea will lead us to the land he promised. Trust in him. Chapter 5. The Song of the Sea. That night the Israelites camped on the shore, their fires dotting the darkness. The sea was quiet, its waves lapping gently, a testament to the miracle. Moses gathered the people, teaching them a song to commemorate the day, a song of God's power, his faithfulness, and his promise to lead them to Canaan. The words burned into their hearts. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Who is like you among the gods, O Lord? Glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders. Miriam led the women in dance, their voices weaving with the men's, a chorus of gratitude. The children listened, wide-eyed, as elders recounted the plagues, the Passover, and now the seas parting. The story of the miracle would be told for generations, a flame of faith passed down. Yet Moses knew the journey was far from over. The wilderness lay ahead, with its trials of hunger, thirst, and doubt. He looked to the pillar of cloud, now reformed, guiding them onward. Lord, he prayed, you have delivered us, guide us still. Chapter 6. The Promise of the Wilderness. The Israelites broke camp at dawn, following the pillar into the desert of Shur. The sea lay behind them, a memory of God's power, but the path ahead was uncertain. Moses walked at the forefront, his staff a symbol of the miracle, his heart anchored in the God who had called him. Aaron and Miriam flanked him, their faith a bulwark against the people's grumbling. Days later, when the water ran dry and the people cried out, Moses turned to God, who showed him a tree to sweeten the bitter springs of Marah. The people drank, and their faith was renewed. Moses knew more trials would come, but the Red Sea's parting was a cornerstone, a proof that God's hand was mighty, his promise sure. The story of the sea's miracle spread beyond the Israelites, carried by traders and nomads to distant lands. Egypt mourned its army, its pride humbled, while the nations whispered of a God who fought for his people. The Israelites, though frail and prone to wander, carried the memory of the parted waters, a beacon of hope in the wilderness. Epilogue: the miracle endures. Moses led the Israelites for 40 years, through trials and triumphs, to the edge of the promised land. The Red Sea's parting became their anthem, a story etched in stone and song, a testament to a God who delivers, who parts the impossible, who keeps his covenant. Moses parts the sea. Miracle was more than an event. It was a promise, a fire that would burn through generations, proclaiming that no sea is too vast, no enemy too great, when God leads his people.